speak to candidates right now. It's just sort of like a sanity check, which I think you will pass, honestly. Let's hope. Is there any way to interpret that Donald Trump actually won the 2020 election, or did he lose the 2020 election?
The way you're framing the question, you're asking me a very specific question. Is there any way? Here's one important unexplored strand. Okay. The Hunter Biden laptop story and its systematic suppression. I'm a data-driven guy.
Really?
I'm a dart too, based on
absolutely
what little I know. Look at the polling data on the aftermath and before and after. There are more than enough people, it's not even by a super small margin, that say they would have changed their vote had they been exposed to that information before that election. The fact is that was systematically suppressed in what was probably the single greatest form of election interference in American history.
And
there was a lot of discussion.
Words,
if I may just finish, just so you get the full freight of my view here.
Yeah.
There was a lot of discussion about the legitimacy of the 2016 election on the back of Russian election interference that actually, it turns out, was actually much smaller scale than surmised. But on the day of Trump's inauguration, there was a lot of discussion. Hillary Clinton called the election result illegitimate and said that it was partly the product of Russian election interference. Whatever that was, that pales in comparison,
really?
To the effect of the systematic suppression on domestic soil of a story that 2 years later, every news outlet in this country has absolutely admitted was indeed true when it was systematically suppressed at the time. So you ask the question, is there any basis? There's your basis.
And it is, do you have an opinion as to, is it the explicit pictures of Hunter that would have in some way changed people's minds, or the as of yet unproven claims that Joe Biden is involved in some kind of bribery fraud scheme, or like what about it?
So I'm not speaking for the survey respondents, but I can tell you what speaks to me.
Yeah.
Actually, because I wouldn't have changed my vote. I voted for Trump, right? So I wasn't one of the survey respondents who said I would have changed my vote because of it.
Good.
So here's what does speak to me, and I think it's relevant. Let's just take this outside the scope of political partisanship. The Burisma payments to Hunter Biden are a deep problem. $5 million paid by a Ukrainian company, privately owned by somebody who at the time was sitting on the National Security Council in Ukraine. Relevant now because it did result in an impeachment of a US president who called, that was Trump, who called for further investigation of that in Ukraine. But that wasn't the only geopolitical consequence of it. I think it has deep-seated implications even now for, say what many people on Russia's side of this say. Well, you have a US president whose son was dealing, when that person was vice president, with actually the Ukrainian government indirectly, accepting what in any other context we would call bribes. So much so that President Obama's staff actually raised this with Biden, only to be shouted down by it. This is a bipartisan concern. That's a real issue. Also, the shell companies created to do business with China and the Chinese government, again, paid millions of dollars. That is relevant information on the eve of a presidential election, when the fourth largest newspaper in circulation, the New York Post, founded by Alexander Hamilton, had its social media accounts locked for publishing a story where you and I would have had our accounts locked for even sending it via direct message or email. So I do think we have to go back and reconcile ourselves with that, have to reckon with that, admit what went wrong if we're actually to move forward in the future. Sweeping that under the rug and relegating that to be the concern of rubes that live in the middle of the country and are election deniers, I think is the wrong approach for us to heal as a country. I think we have to reckon with the fact that we did that as a nation. The United States of America, we let that happen. Admit that. Now, my view is nations make mistakes. You can move forward if you understand those mistakes, but we have to be open about them.
So... Not to stay, are there any of these examples you wouldn't defend? Like, we've gone to Trump rallies and they say Trump's actually still in charge because the generals swore an oath to him. Are you willing to say, is there some version of that one that you think
Trump is not in charge? That's why he is taking great pains to run for president of the United States.
Okay, so that one's just wrong. That one you're not going to equivocate on.
But is it David or Peck? How should I address you?
You know, you can call me anything you want, Vivek.
Okay, got it. I'll call you David. And thank you for saying my name correctly. It is Vivek. So Here's what I will say. I think you and I share this in common. I'll speak for myself, and I'll give you the assumption to start with that you share this in common is
sure.
We care about reviving a national identity and a nation we can be proud of that is united around the principles that set us into motion 250 years ago. That's certainly what I care about. I think that is still possible in this country. I don't know that 20 years from now it'll be possible. I think it's still possible in this country right now. I think you and I are not on the side of a national divorce. If that's the case, then we need to be able to pierce through what somebody, because I went on the Breakfast Club. I don't know if did you see that?
I saw it, of course. Yeah. We did deep prep.
I appreciate that. Deep prep. I appreciate deep prep. So I had a moment in that interview where I could probably have done to this woman, I forget her name, what you might be able to do to the people who were in that room with you in Illinois, which is to take a speck of what she said and then just say, this is my occasion to bury her. I kind of had that moment on set with Don Lemon and decided to take it because that Don Lemon's different. That's not an objective. My question is, what's going on underneath the surface?
Yeah.
Okay? And I think what's going on underneath the surface in our country, left, right included, is that we are all starved, not even hungry anymore. We are starved for purpose and meaning and identity at a time in our national history when the things that used to ground us in our identity, faith, patriotism, hard work, family, these things have largely disappeared. That leaves a moral vacuum, a black hole in its wake. And when you have a black hole that runs that deep, poison fills the void. And so what we need to do is to fill that void with a vision of, in my opinion, American national identity without apology, to dilute that poison to irrelevance. That is what we are starved for. As it relates to the conspiracy theorizing on the right,
sure,
as you'll label, okay? So first of all, I think it's worth just doing a recounting of the last 24 months in this country, right? We were told that a virus that did not originate in a lab in Wuhan, if you said it did, that you were racist and had your social media accounts locked.
Okay, if we
now know
Vivek,
that it originated,
only
right?
because we have limited time and we've gotten this list so many.
भाई मारो मुझे नहीं ये मजाक हो रहा है एक सेकंड यार मजाक